What's up everyone and welcome back to Reload Reacts episode 61. My name is Trey and today we are going to look through r/MaliciousCompliance, the subreddit for those who are technically following all of their given directions, but not the spirit of what they actually mean. This first post is by UnluckyPin9555. They said all guests must sign in, so I made the CEO wait in the lobby until security approved him. We got a new visitor policy last week. The email was bolded, underlined, and said all guests must sign in and wait for security and clearance before entering, no exceptions. I work front desk. Normally, executives just walk through, but hey, the email said what it said. So when the CEO came in early for a board meeting, smiled, and started heading for the elevator, I handed him the clipboard and said, "Sorry sir, I'll need you to sign in and wait while I call it in." He looked confused, maybe a little amused, but sat down. Security took their time, 10 full minutes. The next morning we got a new email. Use discretion for executive level visitors. Go figure. This next post is by Frantic Pedantic. Boss accused me of bullying, so I requested punishment. Years ago, I worked in a semi-public sector job as part of a successful team helping make life easy for local businesses. Our team boss took a good job in the private sector and a new boss was recruited from a decent organisation similar to ours in a different part of the country. She worked compressed hours Monday to Thursday and was off Fridays. A month or two in, and although the new boss was quite particular about things being done her way and had an upset couple of colleagues by criticising their work, I'd had no problems with her. We had a team meeting where the boss said that our performance wasn't good enough. We were arguably the best in the country, and that she wanted to be more involved in what and how we did everything to ensure better quality, and so we could copy her to every client email so she could comment as needed before we sent another reply. Although this seemed inefficient, nobody argued, and I just asked her if I should wait until Monday for her to comment on any client emails received on Friday. I can't remember exactly what she said, but at the end of my meeting, she asked me to stay behind and then told me in a heated tone that my question was bullying behaviour, that it was unprofessional to ask the question in front of the team, and said that my actions were the sort of thing that HR would see as grounds for dismissal and that I should be very careful in future. I told her I understood, and we returned to our desks where I wrote up every single detail of the entire meeting and interaction and sent it to the head of HR, with the explanation that as bullying was very serious and may not be reported by the victim, I felt duty bound to report myself. I also laid it on pretty thick about being appalled by my unprofessional behaviour and the fact that my career was likely at risk and I clearly had a desperate need for training and discipline to fix my dangerous ways. I also copied in my union rep. Within a day, me, my union rep, and my boss, with the head of HR who, being a by-the-book professional, could find no indication of bullying or justification for my fears of being an unprofessional bully in need of re-education. I was asked to leave the meeting. My union boss stayed in and I don't know what was said, but within 6 weeks my boss was gone, and that same week, my weak and ineffective but likeable big boss called me in to thank me, as he had wanted to get rid of her but hadn't known how. I love it when they hand me their rope. This next post is by Gingerly Forged. Manager tries to crack down on dress code. I respond by wearing yoga pants to work. So I, 34M, used to work at a popular convenience store, really popular with a cult-like following, chain years ago. I've always been a bit of a clown but very good at following rules while doing so. After working there a few years and seeing managers come and go, we got in a new woman who was just miserable and really wanted to flex her authority. Shortly after she started, she posted the uniform portion of the handbook in the break room and started complaining about people's attire, but clearly took the biggest issue with girls wearing yoga pants. So me, being the petty rule follower I am, combed through the policy and noticed some things about the wording. The rules stated that yoga pants are allowed as long as the ankles flared and there was no gender designation for these articles. Cue malicious compliance. I and a friend went to Walmart after work and bought me a couple pairs of flared yoga pants. Now mind you, I'm not a huge guy, but I am chubby and I have a big beard. I began wearing them almost every day I worked, and especially if she was working. This infuriated her. I would regularly hear her protests and even saw her go to the assistant general manager and general manager. Their response was always, "I can't say anything, he's in dress code." This continued for a month tops before she requested a transfer, but what made it even more fun was trolling weird pervert customers. They would stand at the deli area and gawk at the young ladies working, especially if they were bent over the hot food table. When I would notice this, I would slide over beside them and give the boys two butts to look at before whipping my head around and making eye contact with them. The level of disgust on their faces filled my heart with joy. Not only were you compliant with the boss, but you were also protecting your co-workers. Good for you. Yeah, good on you, OP. That's really nice. This next post is by NY Gibbs, tenant asking landlord, me, to be more professional. I am a small-time landlord with just 4 tenants. Earlier this year I had 2 sisters that didn't respond to my request to add of the girl's husband to the lease, though he was living with them. Not a big deal, but did I mention the pit bull they also brought home without permission? I do allow pets and had previously approved their other dog. I asked nicely in person and by email in the months leading up to the malicious compliance. They also did not respond when I asked them if they were happy there, and wanted to renew their lease for the following year. I asked again, then I emailed them notice that I would start showing the unit 2 days later. I try to be a nice landlord, I do. They had a newborn as well, so I scheduled all of the showings within a 2-hour window on the same night so I could be in their space as little as possible. Also, because they had not responded, and it was now serious crunch time for getting another tenant and my spouse worked all in the following 2 weeks during evening showing hours, I had the delightful inconvenience of bringing my 2 and 6-year-old children with me to the showings. Because I'm not a corporation, I'm a small-time family landlord with kids. Try to imagine how difficult it is to conduct business meetings with 2 kids, right? Then imagine staggering showings every 15 minutes with prospective tenants who are also bringing their own kids. Just to further clutter your imagination, this is an 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment with a cozy entryway. So I arrive with my 2 kids to find that my tenants are still at home, along with the husband, the newborn, and the other sister's boyfriend. So that's 7 people in a small kitchen already. Then the first prospective tenants start arriving. Husbands, wives with kids, and some showing up early, so there's 2 sets of them. That's 14 people in a small kitchen. And I'm a mom, I have magical powers. So I'm holding my toddler, my daughter is safely under the dining table colouring, and I'm chatting with the prospective tenants and directing traffic while my actual tenants prepare to depart. If you didn't know this already, it's common practice in the US to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. This was their first apartment, so I actually emailed them ahead of time to let them know what is generally expected at showings. A relatively tidy apartment, and that they can leave for their own convenience. They do eventually leave after the boyfriend tells a prospective tenant that he, in fact, also lives there, and I carry on with an exhausting scheduling of showings, and have my new tenants all picked out and lease signed by the next day. Awesome, right? The next night, I get a voicemail from the husband, who is not my tenant. I saved it and just listened to it again because it still gives me that same delightful shiver of malicious compliance. In his voicemail, he told me how awful it was that my children touched his infant's things. They didn't, because I keep my kids entertained with magical mommy toys, but prospective tenants also brought children. And how they had to sterilize everything to keep their infant from being sick, and how inconvenient it was to have showings with only 2 days notice, and how very unprofessional I was to bring my children, and asked if I could just be more professional in the future. You can hear it, can't you? The deep shiver of malicious compliance vibrating through my offended being. The next morning, I started issuing professional lease violation notices. One for the extra residents of the unit, husband and boyfriend, one for the extra dog, and a few additional ones for building concerns I noted during the showings. They ignored the violation notice, which I sent by certified email and thoroughly also by email. I decided to be even more professional 30 days later and issue a 5-day notice to vacate. And I called their mum, who is their emergency contact, as an eviction notice is an emergency. Did I mention that their lease was due to end just a few weeks later? But it would be unprofessional of me to let those violations slide until then. 3 days later, they'd magically sent me all the information I requested, removed the other dog, licensed the first dog, got the required pet insurance, they moved out on their lease termination date, and skipped out their last electric bill and left the unit in a damaged condition. Despite my professional security deposit disposition statement and request for payment, they ignored those notices until I stated I would proceed to small claims court by X date for the total due beyond their security deposit. On X date, they replied stating they didn't think it was fair that they should have to cover damages to the unit or pay any more money towards their utility bill. Yep, 2 months later, they were in the lobby of the courthouse, sitting across from each other on uncomfortable waiting room benches. They're laughing amongst themselves about how they're going to get their full security deposit back, and I'm quietly reviewing my presentation notes to the judge, and my sizable stack of evidence, photographs, videos. This was my first time in court, but I wasn't laughing, I was preparing. 1 hour later, we're back in the lobby and their mum is trying to write me a check for the full amount of the judgment. She doesn't have a pen, her kids don't have a pen, I, however, have a pen. I cheerfully offer my pen. She writes the check and hands it to me and, wait, I hold out my hand again. Got my pen back too. I was so proud of myself for not saying any of the sassy things in my head in that moment. You know why? Because I was being professional, as I'd been from the moment he'd left that voicemail. As a last note, I do acknowledge that it would have been better if I hadn't brought my children. However, if you have kids, you'll understand that sometimes they simply have to go where you go. Well, that story was kinda true. I mean, they were just being professional, they weren't really doing anything wrong. That was actually a landlord that was trying their best, and the tenants were just pretty bad. Usually it's the other way around. The landlord says they're doing good, but they're not really, and the tenants are doing everything they can and the landlord just keeps shoving them down. But damn, Dan, like, the tenants were given many emails, they were given many chances, and they just completely ignored them until the very end, and then were like, no, it's not fair. Like, come on guys, act your age, come on. This next post is by a deleted user. Neighborhood tells Grams he should mind his own damn business. That advice cost neighbor most of his yard and a car. Grandpa had just moved into a retirement park, with a lot that backed up to county land that was nature preserve. His backyard was basically non-existent, but he didn't mind as he got to look out over the preserve. However, he did marvel at how his next door neighbor's backyard extended a good 8 feet past his, giving neighbor a nice space back there. Gramps tried to be friendly with all his new neighbors, exchanging phone numbers and the like, and one day he noticed the next door neighbor was putting down expensive pavers that extended from his back door all the way to the old fence posts that designated the preserve boundary. Gramps watched the neighbor yank the 3 rickety fence posts out of the ground and move them back an extra 2 feet into the preserve before pounding them back in, then started to clear the land, intending to gain himself more area for his pavers. Gramps used to work for the National Park Services as a young lad, so he thought he had better warn his neighbors of the consequences of his actions, so he heads back out for a little chat. Neighbor is immediately defensive, and before Gramps says much, neighbor tells him, "You're new here, I've been here 10 years, and to mind your own damn business." Gramps decides not to press the issue. Nothing happens that year, but the following year, when most of the park emptied out to head north for the summer, the county comes by to check on the preserve. Gramps notices them going back and forth behind his neighbor's house. The workers are pulling out maps and taking photos and making phone calls, and soon, more guys show up. Turns out neighbor has moved the post several times over the years, and in reality his backyard is supposed to be even smaller than Gramps' backyard. To make it worse, neighbor put pavers in the back specifically to park both his golf cart and a cherry red sports car back there for the summer, so the county will have to move them before they can do anything else. They tape a notice to the front door and leave. Gramps goes over to read it, and it states that neighbor was in violation of encroaching onto protected lands. He has 30 days to move his car, tear up the pavers and pay a fine of $11,000 because of damage to endangered species who inhabit the protected lands, as well as trespassing fees. Fail to do so within 30 days will result in golf cart and car being towed and impounded. Pavers will be dug up and carted off at neighbor's expense, and the fine will increase for every additional day past the deadline. 30 days comes and goes, so a week after that, Gramps has quite the show. At first, the car and cart were towed, pavers were dug up and hauled off, and the old fence posts and ropes were replaced with metal posts embedded into the buried cement bases, connected by steel cables. Whole process took several weeks to finish, but the preserve looked a lot more legit when they were done. A few solar cameras were installed so the county could monitor the wildlife and encroachers remotely. Meanwhile, more notices were taped to the front door of the neighbour's house. By November, the snowbirds were flooding back into the park, including Neighbour. That was Graham's second show of the summer, as Neighbour reads all the notices, digging down until he reads the first one, then runs back out and starts screaming and cussing up a storm before running back to his car to dig out his old cell phone so he can call the county to find out where his car and golf cart were. Graham stays indoors to avoid the guy, as he is frantically trying to unload his car, turn on his water and electricity, get the AC and the toilets going, and all the while trying to get someone at county to pick up the phone and give him some answers. He finally gets a live person, and proceeds to scream at them while on speakerphone about his car and cart, so the call keeps getting kicked to other people because who wants to help a screamer? Basically, Neighbour is told to come to the county office to get this straightened out. 3 days later, Neighbour catches Gramps outside and asks if he was here when the county stole his car and destroyed his backyard. Gramps says he was, and Neighbour says, "Well, why didn't you call me when you saw them putting notices on my door? You had my number up north." Gramps said he thought about doing that, but figured Neighbour would prefer him to mind his own damn business, so he decided against it. Damn, he was playing the long con, man. He knew what he was doing. Good on Gramps. This next post is by Tawny Fritz. I had my yard certified as a national wildlife habitat despite a busybody neighbour. Our yard is wild. I mean that in the real definition of living or growing in the natural environment. We have no lawn. We aggressively remove and prevent invasive and noxious species of plants and ensure that what grows is native to our area and drought resistant. The wildflowers that grow are things like lupine, blue flax, spiderwort, black-eyed Susan and sunflowers among others. We have natural elements like driftwood logs to retain water, and we even have an elk skull in the yard to act as a shelter for critters. There are a plethora of birds, bees, bunnies and other wildlife. More wildlife than any yard in the area as far as I can tell. It's beautiful and alive, but definitely not a manicured lawn with perfectly cut grass and landscaping. Last summer we got a notice from our county that our yard was in violation of some county ordinance. My husband called the number on the notice and got a very over it employee who let out a big sigh and said he had gotten like 30 complaints from one person for the entire strip of road that we live on. Keep in mind you can't batch report an area. You have to file reports house by house. So someone had the time and energy to pull up Google Maps and file a report for about 30 houses for overgrown weeds. I checked the county ordinance and make sure everything we had in our yard was in compliance. Things like purposely cultivated, which our wildflowers definitely were. We planted specific species of seeds and we removed whatever's not native. None of the wild plants block any sidewalks, nor do they hang over onto any other properties. Now, knowing that it was someone with way too much time on their hands, I did some reading and learnt that my yard had everything needed and then some to qualify as a national wildlife habitat. So I filled out the form, paid the fee and got my certificate. My husband called the county employee back who said, "Send me that certificate." He looked it over, thanked my husband for the new information he can use in the future and closed our case. I now have signs on my yard that announce the property is a wildlife habitat and the birds and bees get to keep living happily in the wild. That's kinda sweet. I'm glad that they got to keep your yard like that. The top comment reads, and I totally agree with this too, "Yo, you can't just say how cool your yard is and get a certificate and then not show us. Let me see all the cool stuff you have." Exactly. We want to see all that stuff, man. Sure, that looks really cool. And anyway, that's going to be it guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories today in r/MaliciousCompliance. Let me know what you'd like to listen to next in the comment section below. And also hit that subscribe button because I post new Reddit content every single day. There are 2 videos on the screen, one of which is for the most recent video, and another is for a video the YouTube algorithm thinks you'll want to watch next. My name is Trey, this was Reload Reacts, and I will see you in the next video.